This week on our free preview here on YouTube, join us as we take a look at the demand for sausage and is that a recession indicator? For now, sit back, relax, and join us as we take you through the numbers. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Lyndsay.
How are you?
I'm great. How was your weekend?
It was really good. It was nice and slow-paced with little spikes of excitement.
Oh, God. Isn't that the way?
Yes, it was actually like a welcomed reprieve. Stayed at home and got some stuff done around the new house. So.
I'm so glad you're enjoying your new place.
Yes, I really am. How was your weekend?
It was great. It finally is getting that little hint of fall up here.
It definitely is.
So we had some apple picking, and yeah, it's a good time to be in New Hampshire.
Yes, I know. I was thinking about apple picking this weekend. I'm like, is it too early?
It's a little early, so you've got time.
Yeah, I think it's like, I don't like to sweat when I apple pick.
That's fair.
You know, I want it to feel a little bit crisp and cool, but
yeah, we're borderline still.
Pumpkin spice and apple crisp is out in full swing at all the coffee shops.
Yeah,
so
pumpkin spice season.
It is. We have taken a turn. We've gone back to school, and here comes fall.
Here we go.
Yeah. So, not far off from pumpkin spice, but taking a look at our first article takes us into the food sector.
Yes.
So we'll start there. A little segue. The first headline is increased sausage demand could be a worrying signal on the economy. So in summary, the article suggests that an uptick in sausage demand can be a sign of consumers tightening their belts. Mm-hmm. And this is because sausage is considered a good protein substitute when, inflation has hammered us down and folks are needing to stretch their budgets a little bit.
Yes.
So I think the most basic question here, does sausage demand tend to go up when the economy is weakening? Is there a correlation here?
Well, we will look for that correlation. I've got my clicker here. But you're right. This is really the argument that there's a trade down effect, that when we have to tighten our belt, we've talked a lot in the past about maybe not buying the brand name, right? We buy the store brand instead. But this is looking at the substitution from one product to another. So I do have a chart showing pork consumption. So the light blue line on this slide, that is the deflated pork personal consumption expenditures. So think about this, taking inflation out of the mix, just how much pork are we buying?
Okay.
And this is a 12-12 rate of change, so an annual growth rate. So what you'll notice here is that right now we are buying more pork, even once you account for what prices have done, because pork, like everything else, the prices are higher. I'll get to those numbers in a second. But we're buying more, but at a slowing rate of change. So we seem to be leveling off. There was in 2023 this little burst of activity. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what the article is really talking about, that we got excited about, and I didn't have sausage specifically, but pork in general. Yeah, a lot of jokes going to come out of this article, I think.
I think so too. I actually had fun reading it because most recently my partner took my son on a little guys day and he took him to barbecue. So fun. My son's thing right now is piggies. I want to eat all the piggies, he says. So
I love it.
I kept having a little, his little voice in my head when I was reading this article.
Yeah.
It's about a spike into piggies.
A spike into piggies, and here it is.
Yes.
So I'll get to the numbers in a second, but to your question, is there a correlation? Mm-hmm. What I'm showing here in the dark blue line, that is gross domestic product, GDP growth rate.
Okay.
So the argument is when times get tough, we buy more pork. You do see a little bit of an inverse correlation, especially if you look at these two big cycles around the pandemic. So GDP, right, we had the pandemic, the shutdown effect, and we started buying a lot of pork right then. Then the bounce back, the reciprocity, right? GDP came surging back up and we maybe got sick of pork. We were buying a lot less there in 2022. Now things seem to be balancing out. But to say that this is always the case, I mean, there are a couple of cycles here. You could argue the timing back there in the kind of 2010s. Unfortunately, this series doesn't go back too far. We could look at, I really did want a deflated series because we wanted to take that pricing impact out. So I would say it's up for a little bit of debate. There could be something here, but it's not a clear 1-to-1 ratio.
Yeah. And, just out of curiosity, is there a seasonal factor to when we buy more pork? Because the GDP figure, I think it's important to note, is a 312. We get that data in quarterly.
Yep.
And could there be a seasonal factor to when we get more pork, or is it that it spikes and then we get sick of it and we move on?
Maybe, right?
But
if you're looking at the ham, big, holiday ham, right? There is certainly a spike there.
Yeah.
I was really suspicious. I feel like back in 2020 with the shutdowns, that like smokers got really trendy all of a sudden. And so I was looking at that. I'm like, are these just ribs? Like, is this?
That's a good
There
point.
isn't a breakdown. I wish there was. My husband, by the way, is a master at smoking ribs. I have to just give that like shout out to him. And we fell into that, bought a smoker, put it out on the patio, and we bought a ton of ribs since probably, about 2020 or 2021. So I'm wondering, obviously this trend is a lot bigger, but sometimes social changes like that, like it gets trendy to eat a certain cut of meat. You see it everywhere all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Could be part of it.
I think that we need to have a smoke off. I'm sure there's other people in this company, but I know that Jason on my team,
Jason Garfagna, he's where I've gotten all my tips.
Oh, okay. So you're aware
he is the resident grill master at ITR.
Really is. But I bought the smoker.
Yeah.
I think it was just after the pandemic or maybe during the pandemic, we all went to his house for a big barbecue, and he does a great job. So he's definitely figured out how to smoke all them piggies.
That is where I got the advice on which smoker to buy. So, yes.
He's definitely become the resident expert. But I think that's a really good point to make. So, is it a little bit that this indicator is just kind of grasping?
Well, it seems like we're looking for something. We have done this so many times on this show recently. What's that one magical indicator? We've had some funny ones too, right? Which NFL team wins the Super Bowl?
Yes.
There are some very silly kind of economic indicators out there.
Well, keeping with that, is there other like restaurant or grocery store urban legends that potentially indicate a recession?
So I was looking for some good data. The data's a little scarce, but the examples that I came up with are things like instead of buying a steak, you buy ground beef. So you can look at the kind of relationship between those two. Even chicken, right? Poultry is typically a less expensive meat if you're looking for a protein. And within chicken, maybe we buy wings and legs instead of, chicken breasts deboned, right?
Yeah.
There are different things. And organic is the other easy trade down. I can get the exact same item, but if it's not organic or all natural or whatever else it is, if I'm willing to take that kind of quality trade down, that's a good way to save some money. Again, all of those things just go through their own cycles. So if I look at poultry sales, every once in a while we have, concerns about avian flu outbreaks. And so the production numbers get skewed. And so there are just so many, like I said, is this the smoker effect? Hard to really prove the counter.
We will quote you in later economic articles when that is being used.
I hope that's the one that's named after me. And yes, that is my contribution to economics. So what we can look at instead is a bigger category. You mentioned restaurants, and that I think is a pretty good one. Grocery store retail sales versus, it's kind of a wonky title here, but U.S. food service and drinking places retail sales. So I did look at the difference between those two. In the 12 months through July, we spent $886.6 billion at grocery stores. That was up 1.5% from the year ago level. That's in a phase B, or as we say here, accelerating growth trend. So it does seem like we are spending more at grocery stores. However,
and is that because of inflation, or is that inflation adjusted?
You hit the nail on the head.
Okay, sorry,
if
didn't mean to jump the gun.
deflate that figure, that is the exact right question to ask. On a deflated basis, the 12/12 is negative 0.05%. So I'm calling that flat.
Okay.
So it really is just pricing that's keeping this additional spending at grocery stores. Now, if we compare that to, as I said, U.S. food service and drinking places retail sales, so think of that as essentially restaurants. That spending is $1.1 trillion in the 12 months through July, up 7.2% from the year ago level. And if you deflate it, it still is up 2.3%.
Okay, so we are out there spending more money and eating out again.
Yeah. So I don't know how much of this pork consumption is that I'm trading down from something else. Like I said, I couldn't find a filet mignon index or something to really see where it's coming from. But just to put the numbers in context, personal consumption expenditures on pork in the 12 months through July totaled $47.8 billion. That was up 1.6% year over year. And deflated, that's up just 0.8%, as you see here. So this is our deflated figure.
All right.
So we are spending more, but less more on pork.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think in summary, it seems to be grasping a little bit.
Yes.
But what does that tell us about, let's take it to agriculture as a whole. So how is that segment doing right now?
Exactly. So food production, not the demand side, which is what we've really been talking about. What kind of food do people want to buy? But if we look at the supply side, that's where we see a little bit of a bumpier road. As you know, U.S. food production is one of the big series that we include in our trends report. So we are forecasting this constantly. We have an update coming out every month. Food production today is actually below the year-ago level. So our 12/12 rate of change is negative 1.6% in July. However, that was not demand-based. That was really driven by supply. It was lower crop yields due to some very unusual weather patterns across the country in the past year. We do expect rise going forward. Clearly, the consumer can sustain this rise, right? They can go out and buy more food. We see a lot of leading indicators on the food supply side from elevated industry profits. So what that tells us is these businesses can go and invest in their business to produce more, and also capacity utilization, is up. So there seems to be some need, right? And I do expect, like I said, rise from this point.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess there's so many things that you could continue to research on this topic to determine, is it that the weather or whatever just affected the bigger supplies of poultry and of beef? So maybe the piggies they weathered the storm a little bit better, and that's what's on the shelves in greater volume.
Exactly.
So that's what we're having to grab for, rather than making the trade down because of financial reasons.
Exactly. And as we started, I mean, the whole premise of this article is the consumers feeling squeezed. Again, we've talked so much, we'll talk later in this episode about wages that are still up more than inflation, but that feeling is there, that shock. When you go into the grocery store, you see that price on the shelf. Overall CPI in July was up 2.9%. CPI for food only up 2.2%. So these rates are coming down, but that's a cumulative effect that it's up 2.2% this July, but what was it in, the months and years and quarters before? We overall still are seeing higher food prices. That's making our brains do some weird things.
Right. So then you just become in the habit of purchasing what you've been purchasing because either that's what's available or that's because you've traded down to be able to afford it differently. And if you're doing your online shopping, like we talked about months ago in that Walmart episode, if you hit just, sometimes I do this also. I go into the grocery store app and I just go buy again and I hit it all because I need to just get an order in to be able to put food in the fridge for the kids and everything like that. So,
there is a convenience factor.
Yeah. And if you're buying pork or sausage in orders week to week using just that buy again button, you've now just made it a staple in your household. So
I know. It is hard. Do you run into this where you're like, I know what I cook and I just buy the same thing and cook the same meals? You just get in these ruts. So maybe if, pork is less expensive, right? More favorable, I'll learn some new recipes. I love to believe that, but it's probably aspirational.
I'm not a big pork person. Okay. If we're really being honest, I don't cook. I've always said that one day I'm going to create a cookbook that is basically how to microwave stuff.
Oh, I love it.
Because that's just how I've survived as a parent. But then these air fryers came out and that changed the game.
Really?
So I'm pretty good with an air fryer.
Okay.
But yeah, my partner's kids love pork. So, now we've had the piggies in the house. So we might be more of a pork family now. I don't know.
Yeah, again, since the smoker, we've actually gotten so much into the piggies that we bought a chest freezer, and every spring we buy, go in with a couple of friends and buy a pig essentially. And so we have all the different cuts and we just keep them frozen in the chest freezer. It's so great to know, I have one animal here. It's not pieces from everything. And we do the same with beef. We get like a
That's
quarter of a
so
cow.
cool.
It's outstanding.
Yeah, I've not explored that before, but I've heard of people that do these. I don't know if it's like the CSAs or something like that,
Exactly.
for meat and for vegetables. And I would love to just see that be the way of the world. I mean, I know that you need the grocery store and you need these quick shops, but
Right.
I love supporting the local agriculture, and if we can help that number at all, I think we should all be trying to.
Seriously, I agree. And you know me, I do actually love to cook, and I am such a sucker for like I say, we buy half a pig, a quarter of a cow. I'm a member of a CSA, Davis Natural Produce. If you're ever looking here in New Hampshire, they are outstanding, organic. So you do pay a little premium, but you know it's local. We know the farmers. So again, it's all of the choices we're
really
making,
cool.
but it's really cool. And so if this is where my dollars feel like they're going further, plus, I learned how to cook all kinds of crazy vegetables that they're planting.
I mean, I'm gonna need like your easiest recipes, and I'll start.
Perfect. We'll circle back on that.
That's all the time we have for today here on our free preview on YouTube. Please remember to like and subscribe. And if you'd like to subscribe to full-length episodes, click on the link in the description below. But until next time, bye, Lauren.
Bye, Lyndsay.